My brain rang. Suddenly, it's going to jump the gap. It's coming for me. With the logical side of my mind shut off, I turned around and ran, hopefully in the exact opposite direction of the way I came. Behind me, I heard a powerful grunt and then a scuffle of the monster landing on the bank. There was a horrifying roar, something that sounded like a buck and a grizzly bear shouting together. Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 20 of Spooky and Kooky.
As always, if you're into anything spooky, kooky, horror, paranormal, conspiracy, then you're in the right place. We talk about it all here.
Yeah, and it's nice to have you back, guys.
Yes.
Everyone, Alice is back.
Guess who's back? No, it's really nice to be back. I'm so buzzing to be back. Unfortunately, just after we recorded the last lot, which we had planned for me to have time off anyway because I had surgery upcoming, but then just before my surgery happened I got Bell's palsy. So anyone who's watching, you might notice my face looks a little bit different, but my voice is now back to normal, so I wanted to get back into the swing of things. Luckily Ellen stepped up when I couldn't, so thank you for that because I really enjoyed those episodes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening and validating me because it was a bit scary. Yeah. And scary that obviously you were going through everything that you're going through, so I'm glad that you're back on camera with me. Yes. We're back to normal. And this episode, Spooky Woods.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple of stories for you guys, hauntings and otherwise, that make it spooky. So without further ado...
Yeah, grab the picnic basket. Let's get into these forests.
That took me a second and I was like, I don't have a picnic basket. What do you mean? Yeah, I will go into my first story. So it's a Reddit story. It's by Truth by Fire, so thank you for posting your story. I won't reveal much about who I am or where I live. It's been months since this happened, but I've only just come to terms with it, and I need to warn people. Some of this will be disturbing, but I can't hold back. I live in a small mountain town called Colorado. Hiking is one of the few things to do, and by the end of last summer, there was only one trail my friends and I hadn't tried. It ran through the land sacred to the Ute people. I was hesitant, but my friend Mark insisted. He'd been before and wanted to show me, and since I didn't want him hiking alone, I went. We arrived at 9, walking far past paved roads. No tourists knew about this trail, and many of the locals didn't either. The forest was eerily silent, no birds, no wildlife. Mark found it cool, I found it unsettling. At one point, I stepped off the trail and spotted a clearing past a creek with a log bridge. It wasn't natural and looked man-made. When I crossed, I found something I'll never forget. A perfect circle of smooth dirt surrounded by small, uniformly white rocks arranged like bricks, carved with ancient symbols. But one of the edges had been disturbed, rocks shattered, dirt kicked up. The silence there felt heavier and I quickly returned to Mark. We continued. The trail was long but strangely flat, lacking challenge. No one else was out there, and we reached the end by noon and sat down to eat. We packed up what was left of our lunches and started the trek back. Every once in a while, I would hear the rustling. I'd look into the trees, and oftentimes I would see a buck's head. Eventually, though, I noticed it was making far too much noise, and was doing so far too frequently. I told Mark to slow down and stop, and Mark, being Mark, cracked a joke about it. This guy.
Mark's a freak.
Pussy.
From the fact he enjoyed all the silence,
yeah.
I even thought to myself, right, he's a freak.
But finally, he went silent, and we both still heard the rustling. Now, even Mark was a little freaked out. Welcome to the party, Mark. He turned back and saw the vaguest outline of the buck's head again. This time, to me, there seemed to be something wrong. The head was far too high up, around higher branches of the trees. I noticed it, but Mark didn't. I should have said something, but I didn't have time. Just as soon as it was there, it was gone again, going off further into the forest. I remember Mark talking about how deer were annoying as hell, about how he was going to scare it off or something. I don't remember exactly what he said, and that bothers me, because I should remember. He was one of my best friends. I do remember him yelling at it, and at the time it was funny. "Hey Buck, yeah you, horny motherfucker, leave us alone." Good one. He walked off the road and disappeared down the ridge, behind a layer of trees, pursuing it. For a minute, there was silence. That minute became 2. "Mark?" I called out. No answer. 5 minutes passed. I climbed down the ridge after him. "Mark?" I followed the general direction that he had gone in, keeping the way back to the road in mind. I wouldn't go far, I knew, because he was smart enough to not go far. He hadn't. After a short time, I found a place where there were signs of a struggle. In addition, there was blood. There was a lot of blood. It was all over the trees and the ground. I cursed to myself. There were other things too, in addition to the blood, pieces of flesh that I didn't like to look at. There were marks showing that something had been dragged away from here. "Mark!" I called out, furiously now. Forgetting the trail for a second, I ran forward along the drag marks. After running too far to be safe, I reached a small ravine with a creek running through it. I narrowly stopped myself. It wasn't a long drop, but it had hurt you, and a sprained ankle in the middle of the forest was bad news. The trail stopped here. "Mark?" I murmured, then called out again. "Mark?" Something heard, but it wasn't Mark. Across the ravine from me, I heard rustling and saw the trees stirring. Something stepped through the foliage and revealed itself. This was the second image burned into my mind. Please, give me a second. I've spent every day for the past few months trying to tell myself this wasn't real. At first, I saw a head, the head of a buck. But it came forward, and I realised it was 7 feet above the ground. I was staring at a 7-foot creature straight in the face that had a massive buck's head but a humanoid body. The creature snorted. Its buck face remained neutral, scared looking even, as if it wasn't sure of the malicious whims of the body beneath it. There was blood dripping from its horns, which were not like the horns of the average buck, but jagged, pointed and unorganised. A mess of sharp, bloody points. Its human body was dark-skinned and naked, with very human genitalia. Its penis was dripping with blood, just like its horns, implying things that I don't want to think of. Poor Mark. I remember...
Could it not have just got doused in the struggle?
I love how that's his first thought.
Yeah, like, my first thought was just it went everywhere over him, not that.
I remember both its arms and legs. They started human, but near the bottom they started distorting and became animalistic. At the ends of its legs were powerful hooves. At the ends of its arms were hands with long claws, every bit as jagged as the horns on its head. In one of those claws, Mark's body was being held by his shirt. I examined him only briefly, just long enough to notice the shape of his head was not what it had once been. For a moment, there was silence. I didn't scream. I couldn't believe what was in front of me. Then, the creature's ears ruffled. It dropped Mark's body apathetically and started backing up. Its deer head hung lazily to the side as it moved. My brain rang. Suddenly, it's going to jump the gap. It's coming for me. With the logical side of my mind shut off, I turned around and ran. hopefully in the exact opposite direction of the way I came. Behind me, I heard a powerful grunt and then a scuffle of the monster landing on the bank. There was a horrifying roar, something that sounded like a buck and a grizzly bear shouting together. I'd never run so fast or so desperately in all my life, but it was gaining on me. As I ran through the forest, I started to feel its warm, hungry breath on my back. Its hands were extending and I swear I could feel one of its claws scratch me. I ran and scurried up the bank leading to the path. I don't know how I got there without it grabbing me, but I did. Then I took off down the road, hoping that I was going in the right direction. While running, I threw off my backpack and gained some speed. What was in it? Want to see some real speed?
I'm about to get aerodynamic up in this bitch.
Streamline. I think the bank delayed it slightly. That's the only reason I can account for how I may have gotten ahead of it. And ditching the backpack. Wow, I ran and ran and ran. I didn't stop. Eventually I didn't hear it anymore, but I didn't care, I kept running. I'd never been a long distance runner, but my adrenaline was not going to wear off anytime soon, and I intended to take advantage of it. When I reached the end of the trail and saw the road again, I couldn't believe it. I got into the car, and just before I took off, I shot a glance back up at the trail, at the point where it went up between the two mountains, and it was visible from the road. I would regret it. Standing there, near the beginning of the trail, was the skinwalker, as I've come to call it. It had given up its chase, but stood there watching me hungrily, waiting to see if I would come back.
Why would you come back?
Mark would be like, you will never get this.
He probably thought, well, your friend was dumb enough, so...
Yeah. For your friends with Mark, nothing's off the table.
Because if I'm the skinwalker, I'm not, like, standing there looking at you like, I wonder if he's going to come back.
I'll just wait here a second. Maybe you might forget. The blood on its body was beginning to dry. It had run the whole trail and didn't look tired at all. I twisted the ignition, floored the car, and never came back. They never found Mark, and I would never explain what happened. No one would believe me, though I needed to tell someone, which is why I'm posting it here. It came back to me in dreams, nightmares, that creature, the skinwalker. Somehow, I doubt that forest was really sacred. In fact, I'm sure it was the opposite. Because the images that flashed through my mind most often was not the horrific creature. It isn't Mark's mutilated corpse. It's that circle, which must have been maintained over the years by those who knew, those who understood. That old circle, left alone for so long, that it had been quietly penetrated.
I don't think that's real. Otherwise, I wouldn't find it so funny. Like, if that's real, that's obviously like condolences to Mark, and I feel really bad for laughing.
Condolences to Mark.
But I would feel really bad for laughing. But I don't feel like that's real, because how are you going to get home without your friend, and people be like, "Where's Mark?" And he's just like, "I'm not going to explain it because no one would believe me."
I'm not going to justify that question with an answer, actually.
Gonna take that.
Or he just proper gaslights everyone. He's like, who's Mark?
We never had a friend called Mark.
What?
So I can't see it being real.
Unless he said like, oh, me and Mark got separated, I tried to look for him, I couldn't find him. And he's out there somewhere,
yeah.
And then people look for him and they couldn't find him.
But there would be a trail of blood. Also,
yeah. I'm
not saying that I don't like you or anything, but if this happened to us and I see, like,
are you dipping?
Drag marks
You're like, well, it's been
blood
real.
And flesh around, I'm not following it.
What if I was alive?
Whatever's happened has happened.
Oh my god. You just leave me there maimed.
If you're gonna square up to something,
well, no,
you need to get yourself out.
You made your bed.
That's not my problem.
No. What if I just went... well, first off, we're not going hiking. Let's just be real.
Don't call me out like this.
But also, what if I just went for a wee and then you were like, oh my god, this isn't just a wee. And then you'd probably just wait to see if it was just more than that. And I just didn't want to say that I was going to have a shit in the woods. And then
I'd call out to you and I would go and investigate.
Yeah.
But once I had done my due diligence and I saw that scene...
You saw the drag marks, you'd be like, well...
What am I going to do?
Looks like I'm doing a solo podcast now.
But what do you want me to do?
Welcome to Spooky Without the Kooky.
You're still not answering my question of what you actually
I want you to
do.
find me. Or, like, at least look from afar and see if I'm dead.
And then the buck starts chasing me?
No, look from afar.
There's no point in us both... both of our demises coming before our time.
She'd want me to move on. Well, I wouldn't. I want you to come and find me. Bring my body back. Bring my body back, Harry.
I'd come home to Rich and just be like, who's Ellen?
You've imagined this person, Rich.
He'd be like, without Ellen, I wouldn't know you. You're forgetting yourself.
Oh.
Maybe he did go out to the woods that day with Mark, and Mark wandered off and got lost, and there was no hint to what had happened to him. And to cope with the loss, he just came up with that story and chucked it on Reddit for some...
Seems so much more damaging than what actually happened, if that's true.
I just don't feel like it's true. That was my original point. I don't think it's true.
Maybe,
and if it is, I feel terrible for Mark.
Maybe Mark just said one last terrible comment. He was like, you know what, Mark, enough's enough.
He actually is the buck.
Yeah. Yeet off that ravine.
There's an edit later on, like, I am the buck.
The buck is me. I am the buck. We are one.
Anyway, let's move closer to home and go to Deering Woods in the UK.
Where is that? Is that near us?
I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
But we could go visit it if we wanted to. But I don't think we will. So
be like the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, I'm doing that. The Deering Woods are also known as Screaming Woods and are located in Kent.
Oh, that's not so far.
Yes. Just a train journey away, which is anywhere in the UK, but a short train journey away.
So accessible.
The woods earns its nickname due to ghostly screams echoing through the trees. Skeptics put this down to foxes, and arguably foxes do make terrible sounds that would be creepy if you're wandering through the woods at night.
That's true.
However, there is in fact a more haunting explanation that stemmed from the 18th century, where a highwayman robber called Robert Du Bois was tracked down and run through with a sword whilst he hid in the trees, and his screams echo through the trees still to this day, along with apparitions of Robert.
So he was a robber, or he got robbed?
He was the robber, and
Oh,
he's
wow.
also called Robert. You know, like, in olden days where your name correlates with what you did.
So you think he was born to rob?
Yes.
Because they called him Robert?
Yes.
It's like, well, what can I do? Self-fulfilling prophecy.
This is a profession that has been bestowed upon me. So, I've got a little bit of history about the woods, the town that's close to the woods, and then I've got 2 Reddit stories about creepy encounters in Deering Woods. So, Deering Woods is close to Pluckley, a Kent village that has many sites that infamously has its own ghost stories attached to them. The LV farm is said to be haunted by an 18th century farmer who shot himself, and people still hear the mutters of Edward Brett saying, "I will do it." There is a red lady and a small white dog who is seen wandering around a churchyard, whilst a white lady wanders around the church itself. And locals must have feared this lady at the time of her death because she was buried in 7 coffins and an oak sarcophagus. And this is how scatty my mind is, because I read the fact that she was buried and that, so I put that in the script that locals must have feared her, because I was like, that's the only explanation that you would need to bury someone in 7 coffins and an oak sarcophagus. But then I put my research down and I was just laying in bed and I was like, no, why did I, like, I wonder if there's a better story to this that I can bring in.
Yeah, that can't just be a sentence.
So I looked it up. And it's because her husband thought she was really young and beautiful and he just wanted to maintain that. He just wanted to slow down the decomposition.
Oh, okay, so, right. Oh, so it's like a Russian doll thing, like it was a little coffin and a bigger one and a big one. I thought they, like, chopped her up and put different bits.
Oh no!
Different...
They had barriers to the outside.
I thought it was like some kind of vampire thing where they'd like bury her head between her legs, like, so she can't come back. I don't know.
So the Kooks actually didn't fear her. That was for cinematic effect in the script.
Fine. Did it have witches? Did it have witches there?
Probably.
Yeah,
I read a lot. These are just a few of the hauntings that go on there, but I thought we need to go to Pluckley. Bottom line.
To an old ye olde inn.
Yeah. Well, actually.
Oh my
right,
goodness.
Okay. So there is a windmill that is said to have the black silhouette of a former miller. And on top of all of this, in the Black Horse Inn, where many settle to relax for a pint, hear phantom sounds of a coach and horse arriving outside before items start mysteriously moving by themselves inside by an alleged resident poltergeist. We'll have a room for two.
I'll take a twin.
These are all unrelated to Deering Forest, as I said, which has many more haunting tales lurking in the trees. This brings us into the 20th century, the morning of November 1st, 1948. 20 people from the Maltmans area were found dead by a dog walker, 11 of whom were children. Bizarrely, their bodies were found to have no wounds on them, and their autopsies could not determine a cause of death. Authorities, after only a few weeks after this massive loss of life, deemed this event to be due to carbon monoxide poisoning. In 1964, private investigator Robert Collins did his own investigation and conducted in-depth interviews into the alleged cult activity in the area. However, this research was cut short as Collins, a year after starting his research, died in a car accident. You may notice that the morning of November 1st is a day after Halloween night, where the deaths were thought to have taken place. 50 years after this event, on the same night, Halloween, another mystery took place in Deering Woods. 4 college students who were visiting went missing and their bodies were never found, and after only 3 weeks, police stopped investigating. In 1948, witnesses reported seeing strange lights coming from the woods, and in 1998, witnesses also reported bizarre lights which they have described as figures of light similar to spiderwebs in the sky above the woods. These are both terrifying stories, which is a good job they do not appear to be true.
What?
And seem to originate from a creepypasta post and circulated from there. There are no official reports of either incident or any further details that can be found that is different from the original creepypasta.
Oh, so like no actual official news stories or...
Yeah, but it's if you look on the village of Pluckley or you look about Deering Woods, it's everywhere. And it wasn't until I dug deeper and had already written this all out that I realised it's not true. So I thought I'd keep it in just for a little spook.
Yeah, because I was like, wait. No, I believe it.
Why are you telling me this? So, yeah, have you ever been on Creepypasta?
Yeah.
I actually haven't, so I was like, could it be real? You know me, always looking for the truth in those conspiracies. It appears that it's a creepypasta post, and then someone on Reddit had copied and pasted the story to a Reddit post about Deering Woods, and someone had commented saying, this isn't true, this is from creepypasta, and the guy commented, I know, I wrote the creepypasta post.
Oh, that's embarrassing. I would delete that comment so fast.
That sus man. Didn't mean to call you out like that.
Lol.
Anyway, into the Reddit portion of Deering Woods. So yesterday, me and my mates decided to go to Pluckley, most haunted village in England, supposedly. It was a lovely little town and we had a nice time in the village itself. After which we made our way to Deering Woods, nicknamed the Screaming Woods. And I will say, as far as forests go, it was a beautiful place with lush green fauna and a dense landscape. But beyond the beauty of the forest lied a darker and more sinister look to us. In 1948, 20 dead bodies were discovered in these woods, making it very haunted, supposedly, so we know that's not true. We pulled up outside in the car park, and when we got out we walked around the gates to the entrance, and a man with a dog walked past us, but my friend Kian is convinced he saw a woman walking the way we would go soon. No one else saw her. Keeping in mind, my friend Kian is a very honest and trustworthy guy. We kept walking deeper and deeper into the woods till the path we were on became overgrown and signs of human activity seemed to dwindle faster and faster. We then kept hearing what was a woman mumbling off in the distance. Weird, but not paranormal. We hiked deeper and deeper, and we were off the trail now, and in the deepest part of the forest, this was when we asked, "Is anyone there? Please make yourself known." And I couldn't lie about this if I tried, and all my friends heard it. We heard a woman, maybe 30 to 40 metres or so away from us, whisper something unintelligible. We all froze and our hearts sunk. We just made a beeline for the trail, not knowing we were running deeper and deeper. Again, we were lost. At this point, and the feeling of uneasiness had set in for us all. The constant thumps off in the distance and the whispers seemed to get more frequent. We wanted out at this point, so we kept searching for an exit whilst we were convinced we were being followed. We made it out and were all okay, but definitely a scary experience. Just to clear up, there was no one in the woods with us, and the guy who drove us stayed there in the car for 3 hours while we were gone. And he said no one entered the woods whilst we were there, and the man with the dogs left an hour after we went in. Which,
how do they know that?
If I'm the friend who's sat in the car for 3 hours, I'm going to be on my phone.
Yeah. Why would you even wait there for 3 hours? I'm going
And it
home.
seems like a really big woods if you can hike in it for 3 hours and get that lost. How do you know no one else is in there? Like, surely there's another exit.
Yeah, there'd be so many different ways you could go in.
Yeah, so a bit bizarre, but creepy. And then the next Reddit story. This happened just last night. A friend and I made the very smart decision to hop on a train to Pluckley, near Ashford in Kent. Now, I've always been a sceptic when it comes to things like ghosts, but we decided to visit the most haunted forest in the UK to see if we'd find anything. The woods itself is a bit of a walk from the station, as it's in the middle of nowhere. There were just country roads, no pavement to walk on and no street lights for miles. Just a pitch black road with a clear night sky overhead. Other than the occasional car that drove past us, we had to depend on the light from our phones to see where we were going. This is when things started to get weird. As we were walking towards a silhouetted tree line, we walked through a very small cloud of mist. At this point, my friend's phone randomly decided to switch off. He had about 30% battery remaining at the time, and this was the first time his phone had ever done this. Shortly after restarting it, it crashed again. Putting it down to a mere coincidence, we continued towards the forest, when about 5 minutes later, the same thing happened to my phone. This had already spooked us, but the next thing we heard/saw really freaked us both out. We were walking along a straight road trying to find the entrance to the woods when my friend heard something rustling. I didn't hear anything at first, so we both stopped and listened. All of a sudden the bush started moving. We heard an unsettling noise coming from the other side. Something was definitely in there and had seen us, and it did not run off like a normal wild animal would. We pretty much shat ourselves and sprinted back up the road to get away from whatever that thing was. As we got further away from the woods, we could both hear a loud but distant, harrowing female scream coming from the woods as we walked back towards the station. Nothing else happened to us after that, and our phones have been working fine ever since, but I have no explanation for what we both experienced.
That's gross.
Yeah.
So they went in the dark. Fools. Why would you do that? Why?
With no phones. After my phone's turning off, I'm like, shall we just go to that inn, that haunted inn, so I can get a charge on it?
I'd rather be haunted in comforts.
But yeah, I liked that story because obviously I always seem to gravitate towards the UK ones.
Yeah, I do like knowing that. Well, of course the UK is going to be spooky. We have a lot of history.
Yeah, I like how the UK ones are so low-key, like, oh, we heard a scream, or we heard some whispers, or not the fact that there was a 7-foot buck humanoid thing chasing them with a dripping penis, hungrily chasing them. Its hungry breath on my back. I just dropped
hungry
my
for
what? And ran. So yeah, the UK ones are definitely more low key.
Yeah, but that just describes the UK people. We are more low key. Why are woods so scary? Because when you think about it, surely they're like safer than being surrounded by people who are like, there's probably, I was going to say there's probably a murderer on the street, but that's maybe a bit far. But you know what I mean? Like, there's less people around.
I don't know, because there's stuff that, like, obviously, if you're in the woods with those nefarious intentions, like, it's easier to get away with stuff. So those nefarious people are going to hang out in there. But
surely they're few and far between. But then every time I'm in a woods and I hear something, I just accept that I'm going to die. Like, a person's going to... There's a murderous axeman in there. And
especially
I'm
in the UK as well, because there's not any, like, wild animals. And I've always thought to myself, oh, I'd be so sick to go to America and go on a tour of, like, the national parks and the national forests. A, I'm not an outdoorsman, so I'd get lost. And, like, what resources do I have to my disposal? Nothing.
Well, like, me, apparently.
Yeah. But also,
throw
like,
me for dead.
What else do you find?
Coyotes.
Coyotes. Bigfoots. There's just a lot.
I love how you're so casual. It's like, Bigfoot.
Couldn't think of anything else. So
what else?
Like,
hawks.
Don't even, because eagles and hawks, I think it's both, or maybe it's just hawks, or maybe it's just eagles, but they can carry off a small child, which I have not. But
eagles can. Have you seen how big a bald eagle is?
Yeah.
Massive. That's why the little chihuahuas and stuff, they put the spikes, when they go out for a walk, they put these coats on with spikes on so that a bird can't just come and pick it up.
Yeah. Can you imagine if you're walking your dog and that happens?
It's just like... Whoop.
I would...
It's bad enough when a seagull takes an ice cream from you. That is traumatising.
But I can't imagine being out on a walk with you and just see you get, like, your little legs dangling in the air as a hawk carries you off. I would just be like, what's happening?
Ick.
Get down. You're embarrassing everyone. Embarrassing me and you're embarrassing yourself.
Yeah, that would be so embarrassing. I don't know if, like, I could speak to you after that, because I'd be like, we're both thinking about how I was dangling, being carried away.
It drops you and I'm just like, don't look at me.
Make your own way.
I'm never looking you in the eye again. Or you become a bird woman and I see you in a nest being fed by the eagle.
I become a mothman.
A mama eagle.
You just see me on the top of the bungalow, like...
That instant changed her forever. Never been the same after that.
That's when the feathers grew.
It's like in Spider-Man when he got those powers by a radioactive spider. You get bitten by a radioactive eagle. And just
pecks me.
Yeah. Those beaks are sharp though.
Yeah, they are. I just start speaking and it just turns into a squawk. Okay, so this is another Reddit story, and it's called What Dwells Upon the Mountain, and it's by Pippinacious. Okay. It's never just a normal, the normal name. The first time I saw it was the last time I saw my father. I was 9 years old and Dad had finally agreed to take me hunting with him. Our family owned a mountainside cabin a couple of hours upstate, and every fall he'd drive up for the weekend and try and nab some deer or turkey. Just nab it. He'd never taken me before. He always said I'd be bored or scared of the rifle or grossed out when it came time to clean the kill. But the last time I was on a mission to convince him that none of that would happen. I showed him the book I'd carefully selected to bring up to the deer stand in case I needed something to do. And I reminded him that I'd watched him and Uncle Sam shoot cans the summer before when we'd gone camping and had been fine. And I told him all about the nature shows I'd been watching on TV, the ones with the lions eating the gazelles. After a long talk with my mum, who wasn't much for hunting herself, and who wasn't sure our daughter should be either, he relented and I was told I could go. I was warned though that if I didn't enjoy myself or spent the whole time complaining, Dad wouldn't take me again. They didn't need to worry, I was determined to prove that I could be the best little hunting buddy he'd ever had. We left the following Friday afternoon after I'd gotten out of school. The back seat was full of gear, so I got to sit up front, a rare treat for me. I spent the long drive peppering Dad with questions about what to expect and if he thought we'd actually catch anything, and he answered each with his usual patience and good cheer. When there were lulls, he'd tell me about hunting trips he'd taken with Uncle Sam and their dad when they were growing up, and even suggested that we might all go together next year if I ended up liking it enough. It was getting dark when we arrived at the cabin. I'd only been a couple of times before, and somehow I always managed to forget just how isolated it felt. Built halfway up the mountain, deep in a forest of pine and oak trees, the cabin was a simple log structure with no running water or electricity. Immediately no. I need that shower.
It sounded really nice, but then when you said that, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go.
I'm liking it less and less. There was just an old well.
Of course.
No, I don't know that. I just added that in. The quiet that surrounded it was thick, broken only by the rustling of underbrush or bird calls. And I stayed close to Dad as we unloaded in the fast fading daylight. Inside, Dad gave me a short tour by lamplight to help reacquaint me with the place. Small bedroom with 2 cots, cramped living room with an old lumpy couch and a coffee table in front of the fireplace, and a kitchenette where they'd squeezed in a card table and folding chairs.
Still no.
Lumpy couch.
If the fact that there's no running water hadn't got me to say no, that would have done.
There was a hatch in the floor leading down to a cold cellar. No, thank you. But I wasn't allowed to go down there by myself. God. And that's where I heard the screams now. The only bathroom came in the form of a rickety outhouse behind the cabin. I was less than thrilled about that. There were webs and permanent lingering smells, and it was chilly enough that my teeth chattered, but I dealt with it as stoically as a little girl could. Complaining meant no more hunting trips, and I wasn't going to let that happen. Sorry, what is so great about it? Because so far, I'm not here for it.
I was going to say that when they were like, oh, if you complain or you make a nuisance of yourself, then you're not going ever again. And it's like, if I'm complaining, why would I want to go again? And if I don't like it, I'll just say I'm not going to go next time. You're not going to force me.
Well, you're not going. Oh, it was hard getting to sleep that night. Dad made us go to bed early since we'd be up before dawn. But while he had almost no trouble drifting off, of course, I could barely get my eyes to stay closed for more than a few seconds at a time. The strangeness of the place made it hard to relax, and every so often, over the squeak of the cots and Dad's snoring, I was sure I heard something moving outside the cabin. A scuffle of leaves, the snap of a twig, and then silence for a short time before it would resume, as if it was circling the cabin, as if it were looking for something. I clutched my sleeping bag tightly around myself and kept myself turned pointedly towards the wall. There was a short, hurried skitter of footsteps that sounded like they were coming from just outside the cabin, and then another brief pause. And for a long moment, something breathed slowly and heavily against the window opposite my cot, right over where my dad was lying. By the time I could bring myself to turn enough to peek, the sounds outside had stopped and there was nothing staring at me, just empty darkness. I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or creeped out even more. The only way I managed to get myself any sleep that night was by repeatedly telling myself that my dad was 2 feet away from me and he wouldn't let anything happen to me. It was still a restless and uncomfortable night, and when my dad's wristwatch started to beep at 5:30 a.m, I groaned and buried myself as far inside my sleeping bag as I could.
They don't even have quilts, they're in a sleeping bag. And they have to be up at 5:30.
It clearly doesn't even have any curtains or anything, so...
Again, that's an immediate no, I'm not going somewhere without any curtains.
No, what are the redeeming factors here?
Get a better cabin, or I'm not coming.
Get some broadband, some Wi-Fi. Dad didn't let me retreat for long though, and after a hearty breakfast of bacon and eggs cooked in the hearth, we bundled up, gathered up what we could and what we would need for the day in a deer stand, and trundled out of the cabin with a couple of flashlights to guide us. Although I was nervous to be outside, I didn't tell him about what I'd heard whilst he was asleep. I didn't want him thinking I was too chicken to go on a hunting trip with him. The stand was a little over a mile up the mountain by a winding, often uneven footpath, and progress was slow. Dad had me take the lead, offering directions from over my shoulder whenever the path diverged, and stayed close behind. It wasn't unheard of for hunters to come across black bears or wolves while out in the woods, and he wanted to make sure that nothing was able to sneak up on us. In a way, hearing that there were large predators around us was almost reassuring, maybe even a little cool. Okay. The thing I'd heard outside our window the previous night seemed less scary when I thought that it was just a big animal. What?
In all fairness, I'd rather that be a big animal than... I don't know what else it could be, but...
Yeah, a murderous person, I guess.
Breathing at my window.
They're probably like, is there any... Have they got a TV in here? Nah, like shit.
Any running water?
We'd been learning about local wildlife in my science class, and it would have been neat to tell my teacher I'd actually seen a bear in real life. I felt even better when the woods around us gradually started to lighten into a misty grey as the sun started its slow climb over the horizon. I'd run a little bit ahead of my dad, braver and more excited now. There was a little bit more light, and I rounded the curve of the trail at the same time he called for me to slow down and wait for him. I came to an impatient halt, but it quickly turned curious as I realised there was something lying just off of the footpath and not far from where I was standing. It took me a few seconds to realise I was staring at a human arm. Only the forearm and hand were visible. The rest of the body from elbow up seemed to be buried underneath the brush, as if someone had tried to unsuccessfully hide it. The part I could see was fish belly white, slender and very still. It stuck out sorely against the surrounding ground. Dad? I hadn't expected the word to come out in such a nervous squeak. Yeah? He had caught up, and by then must have quickly followed my gaze to the arm, because he quickly followed with, "Oh God, stay there, Faith, don't move, okay?"
Who's chicken now?
Yeah. I nodded, my hands twisting anxiously around my backpack straps, and he set down his things on the trail next to me. With another reminder not to follow him or touch the rifle, he hurried towards the arm, glancing back only to make sure I was staying put. He was only steps away from it when the arm slithered back into the ground and a hatch erupted upwards in front of him. A creature with the head and torso of a woman, dark-haired and nude. Why they always gotta be naked? Hauled itself out of the hole beneath the hatch and lunged at my father with a writhing mass of spindly, spider-like arms. It was the only time I ever heard Dad scream. He had tried to stop, tried to turn around, but it sank its long nails into one of his legs and yanked him backwards. He howled with such terror and pain that I finally found my voice and started to scream too. I was
Helpful.
frozen in place. Did he not take the rifle?
I was literally just about to say, doesn't he have hunting gear on him?
And I watched that thing envelop my dad, wrapping him in those numerous terrible arms, and it squeezed tighter and tighter until he could only gurgle. His feet kicked uselessly against it, and he was dragged back towards its hole. So it's literally like one of those trapdoor spiders.
Is
That's
it like
what
an
happened.
anaconda or something?
I think it's like some kind of spider woman.
Oh.
You know how the trapdoor spiders do when they put a leg out and then it's like bleh.
Oh.
I think that's what just
The
happened.
whole thing is just grim.
Yeah. It stared at me from over his shoulder, its milky eyes bright against the dirt-streaked face as they both sank back into the ground. It was over as quickly and suddenly as it had begun, and once they were gone and the hatch had closed again, there was no sign that either my dad or that thing had ever been there at all. I was found halfway down the mountain, hysterical and unable to speak, by a couple of hikers some time later. I must have run down there, but I didn't remember it. I just remember so many faces and flashing lights and confusion. Uncle Sam, who lived only half an hour from the cabin, was the first of my family to arrive, followed by my grandparents, and then a couple of hours later, my mum. They all asked me the same questions. They all got the same answers. None of them knew what to make of my story. My dad was officially labelled a missing person for the next decade, although it was speculated that he'd been victim of an animal attack, and I was put into all kinds of programs and therapy for traumatised children. It didn't stop the nightmares though. I had them every night, always the same, the monster woman lurching out from under her trapdoor, her dozen spider arms reaching for my dad. My mum found religion and married a good pastor who suggested I attended a specialised boarding school for kids like me. Coincidentally, far away from his own young children. That never happened though. Mum couldn't bear the thought of me being out of her sight. My uncle sold the cabin and never went back to the mountain. He wouldn't even talk about it. I spent almost 2 decades feeling alone, caught on just this side of crazy by a childhood memory that everyone else told me was false, just something my brain made up. And then, when I was just shy of 30, breast cancer got the best of my mum. Her husband tried to tell me that I didn't need to go home for the funeral. It would just be a small affair, she'd understand if I missed it. But I told him to go fuck himself and booked the next plane ticket out. He told me my mum's affairs were in order and there was no reason for me to be there. Again, I told him to go fuck himself. A week and 1 expensive phone call on my behalf from the local attorney later, I was granted 2 hours of uninterrupted access to my mum's things. I didn't think I'd need that much time. There wasn't much I wanted. A few photo albums, maybe my mum's wedding ring from her marriage to my dad. Stuff that would only mean something to me. Most of the boxes were layered with undisturbed dust, telling me they'd been there for a long, long time. There was, however, positioned carefully behind a stack of others that was creased and worn and entirely clean, as if it had been opened frequently. I pulled that one out first and tugged it open. Papers filled the box. At first I thought they might be medical or legal documents, but a closer look proved me wrong. They were articles, interviews, newspaper clippings, some with highlighting or handwritten notes, all having to do with the mountain. Mum's research had been painstakingly thorough, dating back to shortly after my dad had died. She'd photocopied pages out of books, held interviews, dug up old photos. She'd spent years, right up until her cancer took a turn for the worst, tracking down every mysterious tragedy that had occurred on the mountain in the past 40 years. And they all seemed to lead back to a single, small group. A cult known as the Gathered had made their home up high in the mountains in the 50s. They were private, isolated, and didn't like outsiders trying to infringe. Mostly the townspeople in the valley below left them alone, but when their residents started to disappear, they became suspicious and started to look towards the gathered. After a 7-year-old girl went missing in 1968, suspicion turned to open hostility and police made their way up to the commune. They did find the girl, or pieces of her, along with many of the other missing folks and the entire population of the cult, all dead by their own hand. By the look and the smell of things, the authorities were just a few days too late. A note left behind by the self-proclaimed leader stated the gathered had fulfilled their purpose. They'd opened the doorway and that the ungodly ones would soon walk in their earthly place. They were written off as a bunch of crazy evangelicals, and the commune was burned to the ground. The town below mourned their losses, but tried to put all thought of the gathered behind them. It was not such an easy thing, however. People started to see things up in the woods, dark things that they claimed stalked them, and disappearances became a regular occurrence. Excuses were made, logical reasons provided, and a strong attempt to brush off what was termed nonsensical superstition was made. Anyone who said they experienced something up on the mountain was described as gullible or childish. It wasn't a completely successful campaign, and sightings still trickled in despite the negative backlash they received. The most common report was that hikers or campers had spotted an arm, half buried, alongside various trails. There was even one from a lumberjack stating he had witnessed another man being pulled into a well-camouflaged hole by a hideous woman with an unnatural number of elongated arms. A brief follow-up article that Mum had stapled to the original one said the lumberjack had been committed to an asylum following his delusional statements. I rocked back on my heels and I held those papers to my chest with a shuddering sigh. I didn't know what to feel right then, surrounded by years' worth of my mother's research. What I did know for sure was that my mum had believed me. I could only assume that she was trying to steer me back into normal life by denying it, that she'd been trying to protect me and give me back some sense of childhood. Now, though, I knew the truth. Now, I knew she'd been listening all along. I knew that I wasn't crazy. And now, I knew for certain that there really was something horrible dwelling on that mountain.
That's such a sad story.
I know.
And I feel like a lot of parents try and do that. Like, they want them to have a normal childhood, so they just deny it, but actually it would just be better to
just say it,
bring it forward.
Yeah.
But it's good that her mum had all that research, but that was it started off hee hee ha ha, and then it went quite dark.
Yeah. Oh,
I feel quite somber. So the watchery today is going to be something kind of related because it did happen in a forest. So there you go. It's the new film that's out in cinemas. It might still be out in cinemas by the time this episode gets released, but I saw it a couple of weeks ago, so who knows. It's Until Dawn, and it's based on a PlayStation game.
Yeah.
But the movie is apparently different to the game. I wouldn't know because I've not played the game. It's got similarities, but it's not completely...
like for like.
Yeah. So I've actually got the IMDb description today because I watched it 2 weeks ago. I didn't want to try and make a synopsis up in my brain. So I thought I'd go from this and then give it some additional comments.
Okay.
So 1 year after her sister Melanie mysteriously disappeared, Clover and her friends head into the remote valley where she vanished in search of answers. Exploring an abandoned visitor centre, they find themselves stalked by a masked killer and horrifically murdered one by one, only to wake up and find themselves back at the beginning of the same evening. Trapped in the valley, they're forced to relive the night again and again, only each time the killer's threat is different, each more terrifying than the last. Hope dwindling, the group soon realises they have a limited number of deaths left, and the only way to escape is to survive until dawn, which is obviously why it's called Till Dawn.
Yeah.
So it's actually based on Wendigos, and the guy who is stalking them is almost doing experiments on people to see how he can mess with their psyche so much they turn into Wendigos.
Yeah.
But obviously it does have that paranormal element of he's bringing these people back to life over and over, so it's a bit bizarre.
It's spooky. So it's kind of like a slashery type.
Yeah, it's very gory.
Is it?
Very gory.
Like
which
Evil
is
Dead
good.
gory.
Yeah. The only thing I didn't like about it was there's 5 people in the group. 4 are like friends from childhood and they're ride or die for each other.
Yeah.
And then one character, Abe, is someone else's boyfriend in the group, and he's only been in the group for like 3 months, I think they said, or they're coming up to 3 months. So he's not been dating that person that long. He's not been friends with these people that long.
Yeah.
And all Abe wants to do is go get in the car and go get help. He wants to leave, but obviously their friends would then still be trapped there, or they're going to keep dying over and over when Abe wants to leave with the girlfriend. Everyone thinks Abe's an arsehole for that.
I thought you were going to say he like sacrificed himself or something, and you're like...
No, he did. So at one point he did come up with a plan, because I think the masked killer guy was like, look, if one dies, the others can leave.
Oh.
And he was like, well, let's just do that. And they were like, well, are you going to volunteer? And he was like, well, no.
It's a discussion.
But before that, when he was trying to get in the car, his girlfriend actually kills him one of the times, because she was like, how dare you leave my friends? And I was just kind of sat there like, he doesn't know you people.
How do they know that they have a certain amount of lives?
So when they get to the visitor centre, there's a check-in book, and everyone else who had checked in and gone missing there had written their name down in the visitor book. And everyone had only got up to 13 times.
Oh, that's quite a lot of times.
So they knew it was coming. They don't show you every single time.
Yeah.
But they go through at least like 5 or 6, and they are all quite gory.
Yeah.
And yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. It had gore, it had some suspense and horror, and it had quite a decent storyline.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was different.
I kind of like that premise, really. It's a bit different. Yeah. Usually we end it on the watch tree. However, today we have a little promo to show you guys. It's one that I love, actually, and I listen to quite a fair amount. They're called Haunted UK Podcast. It's Steve presenting it, and he goes through all stories, a lot of British hauntings, a lot of British spookiness.
Yeah, lesser known ones as well.
Yes, which is kind of cool. So we're going to drop their promo after we finish this episode. So if you hold on, you'll be able to see their little clip and go check them out. They're on Spotify and YouTube, and I enjoy them, so maybe you will too.
See what you think. Head over there, give them some love.
Yeah, but thanks for coming back another time.
Yes. Thanks for watching. I've had so much fun today being back, because it's been a long time since we recorded, like way longer than when our last episode came out.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's not been too awkward getting back into things.
I don't think so.
If you've got to this point, thank you for staying with us, and don't forget to give us a like and subscribe if you like the content, and give us a comment, tell us what you think, and if you've got any stories of your own, we'd love to hear them. You can DM pretty much Ellen on Instagram, because she's on the Instagram account. So
yeah, on Spooky and Kooky Pod. Give us a message.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully see you next time for the 21st episode. Into the 20s now.
Goodness. See you later, guys.
I picked up the phone and said hello. At first, there was just a crackling, static noise. Then a voice, which sounded like part of the static, said, "I'm not leaving." Then the line went dead. Chills went all over me, but I was determined to find out if this had a rational explanation. I went back to the other office and waited outside for Darren to arrive with the keys. A few minutes later, we were unlocking the door and inside, only to find out that the phone wasn't even plugged into the wall. This is the Haunted UK podcast, and I'm the show's host, Steve. And that was an extract from Working with the Unknown, a terrifying tale about a listener's experience in her nighttime workplace. One of the many true cases we regale and present to you on the show. So if you enjoy a creepy tale or two, stories of real-life ghost encounters, doppelgangers, time slips, lesser-known UK hauntings, then join us every Friday for an episode where we frequently cross the threshold of the unknown.